Joining me now is Tonya Allen. She is the president and CEO of the Skillman Foundation. Tonya, it's always great to see you up here at Mackinac.
Oh, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me again. I really appreciate it.
What are some of the great conversations that you have had so far, maybe even centering around education up here?
Right. Well, I think some of the conversation that we have that have been great is that people are really asking for what are the solutions around education and how do we have the right impact. And I think that a lot of times in education, we often talk about governance, who's running education, which doesn't usually get to the impact and results that we want. And I think people are really looking for that and trying to figure out concrete ways that their corporate or the private sector can get engaged. And so that's been one of the things that's been a highlight, just this rich, caring power of our corporate sector.
Because I think that so many people have issues with the state of our education right now, and especially in the state of Michigan, and where we're going with standardized testings and where we're going with curriculum, because we all, at the bottom line, want our kids to succeed. Do you think that we're finally having those concrete conversations that can lead to action? Because there's a lot of talk, but finally getting someplace that we can all agree on.
So I think that the private sector is interested in figuring out how they can have a more active role, but I think we're actually not having the right conversations at the state level.
What do we need to have conversations about then?
One is that we need to actually face the facts that as a state, we have not set any academic goals and we're not meeting them. So if you look at us over the last 10 or 15 years, we've just been sliding down the scale of states. So we're now at the top of the third quartile, and we really need to set some goals. Like the governor always talks about metrics, like set the metric that we want to be in the first quartile as a state. And then we need to look at what are the best practices of those other states that are in the first quartile. What are they doing? And quite honestly, the things that we're seeing in our legislature that are being approved and the things that we're debating are the things that those states aren't doing or saying that these are not the best practices. And one is like the fact that we allow more charters without a quality standard. The second is that the Common Core curriculum, that we're still fighting over something that we agreed 10 years ago was a good thing for our state, but we didn't have it. And now that we actually have the opportunity and it's associated with a president that, you know, some of our representatives don't agree with, there's a fight to it. And we know that that's best for our kids. That's what we've seen in Massachusetts for a long time, and they're leading the nation.
So what does it take then? Because it feels like we do come up here every year and education is part of the conversation. Do you think that we are going to reach a point where education is going to be now the full conversation, that there is actually going to be something that is done?
Yeah, I think so. So one of the things that I'm really hopeful for is that in the next year, and I think there's a lot of great things that are going on in education, especially in Detroit, and we're seeing pockets of excellence across the state, quite honestly. And I think a lot of that work has been done because people have making the right investments, but what we're having challenges is scaling those pockets of excellence to a full system of excellence. So I think one of the things that we're going to have to do in the next year is get some agreed upon statements of metrics, and that we got to lock in on that and make sure that we're holding people accountable to it. So we talked about STEM education up here all week. Well, one is that in the last 10 years, we've been able to increase the number of certificates and degrees in STEM education. We've doubled it from 15 to 32%. Well, why can't we double it again? Let's be intentional about it and say that we're going to go from 32 to 64% over the next, 10 years. Let's just make that, and then let's figure out how we incrementally measure that, and then focus on it. And I believe that Michigan, Southeast Michigan in particular, when we say we're going to do something, we actually do it. But the problem is we've just missed the opportunity to focus and devise a plan.
You know, I think it's interesting that you bring up, what's happening in the legislature, because the work that you're doing with Skillman, I mean, the work that foundations are doing with schools to help, I think, supplement some of these programs, and you just give some money to Cody High School.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that, but just in terms of the addition that's coming from a lot of the foundations to make sure that our schools are a good place for our kids.
Right. So one of the things that we did with Cody High School and Osborne High School, along with the United Way a couple of years ago, was to actually take these big behemoth like schools that weren't working for kids and to break them into small schools, and to make sure that those small schools had a more personalized touch and a college preparatory curriculum. And so what we're finding is that graduation rates went from 40% up to upward of 80, 85% in those schools. not necessarily college ready yet, but recently we made a grant to Cody High School to help redo the field as a part of a broader revitalization effort called Life Remodeled. So there's going to be home improvements. Kids are going to be in the process of taking out blight, making sure that their neighborhood is safe and beautified. And so we're excited about that because we think we have to not only prepare kids for STEM, right, but and for college, but we also have to prepare them for life and for citizenship, and we think that this is a good opportunity.
All right, and congratulations on all the great work that you do, Tonya.
So
it's always
much.
good to see you.
It's so good to see you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. Stay with us.